It's a destination like no other place on the planet.
Welcome to the Antarctic.
But getting there comes at a cost to the environment.
Antarctica is not just remote, it's a place that quietly refuses entry. From the moment a ship approaches, it dictates who moves, where, and for how long.
The association that represents Antarctic tour operators has pledged to achieve net zero emissions before 2050.
Beneath its endless ice lies a system of laws, treaties, and environmental protections that make casual visits impossible. Unlike anywhere else on Earth, human presence here is measured, monitored, and heavily restricted. Even as tourism surges, the continent resists crowds, extreme weather, fragile ecosystems, and legal limits. Reaching Antarctica isn't about getting there. It's about respecting the rules that keep it untouched and realizing the true cost of ignoring them. White silence at the edge of the world. No one can simply go to Antarctica, and the reason becomes obvious the moment you get close. The ship slows without warning. Wind shifts. A landing that looked certain an hour ago quietly disappears from the schedule. No explanation is needed. Everyone on board understands that Antarctica decides first, and people adjust second. This is where the illusion breaks. From a distance, the continent looks open, empty, and untouched. But once you are here, movement narrows fast. You're told where to stand, when to wait, how long you're allowed to be on the ice. Curiosity is regulated. Before anyone steps ashore, boots are scrubbed, jackets are checked, bags are inspected for seeds, dirt, or anything that does not belong. Groups are counted, then counted again. The landscape stretches endlessly in every direction, yet access keeps shrinking. There are no towns ahead, no roads, no landmarks you can drift toward if something catches your eye. Antarctica offers no wandering. Every path is chosen in advance. And even then, it can vanish in minutes if the weather turns. The silence makes it heavier. No insects, no trees, no distant human noise. Just ice, wind, and the low mechanical hum of the ship that brought you. And that ship matters more than you realize, because it is not transportation. It is shelter, power, heat, food, and escape, all in one. Out here, plans do not matter as much as permission. And permission is not just about weather or safety. It comes from something larger, older, and far more restrictive than most people expect. Because Antarctica is not just hostile by nature, it is controlled by design. And the rules behind that design are the real reason this place stays out of reach. The rules that keep everyone out. One of the reasons no one can go to Antarctica freely is because the continent was never meant to be entered like the rest of the world. The restriction does not begin with ice or distance. It begins with law. In the late 1950s, Antarctica was at risk of becoming the next global dispute zone. Several nations had overlapping territorial claims. Others were interested in military positioning. During the Cold War, the idea of bases, weapons testing, or nuclear activity at the bottom of the planet was no longer hypothetical. So instead of dividing Antarctica, countries chose to lock it down. In 1959, 12 nations signed what became the Antarctic Treaty. It applied to everything south of 60 degrees south latitude. The core idea was simple and radical. Antarctica would be used only for peaceful purposes. Military activity was banned. Weapons testing was prohibited. Armed presence was not allowed except for limited logistical or scientific support. Just as important was what the treaty did with ownership. All territorial claims were frozen in place. No claim was recognized, no claim was rejected, and no new claim could ever be made while the treaty remained in force. Nothing anyone did on the continent could strengthen or weaken a country's position. This removed competition, but it also removed normal access. Antarctica became a place without borders, without citizens, and without a government. There was no authority to issue visas, no state to grant entry, and no country responsible for public safety. Instead, access was tied to purpose, science, logistics, and tightly regulated activity only. The treaty also built in strict oversight. Any member nation could inspect another nation's stations, ships, or equipment at any time. Nuclear explosions were banned. Radioactive waste disposal was prohibited. Transparency was mandatory, not optional. Over time, this framework expanded into what is now called the Antarctic Treaty System. Environmental protection was added. Mining was banned entirely. Waste had to be removed. Wildlife disturbance was limited. Even footprints began to matter. Decisions are still made the same way today. Representatives meet regularly and agree only by consensus. No majority votes, no shortcuts. If one major party objects, nothing moves forward. This system has been extraordinarily successful at preventing conflict. Antarctica has remained demilitarized and politically quiet for more than 6 decades. That alone makes the treaty one of the most successful international agreements ever created. But success came with a side effect. The treaty was designed to stop nations, not manage crowds. It assumed limited human presence, small research teams, seasonal expeditions, careful logistics. It was never built for popularity. And now, for the first time, Antarctica is attracting people not because they need to be there, but because they want to be there. And that shift is where the next pressure begins. When curiosity turned into a crowd. For most of modern history, human presence in Antarctica was tiny. A few hundred scientists, rotating crews, isolated stations. Visits were rare, deliberate, and purpose-driven. However, that balance has shifted fast. In just a few decades, Antarctic tourism has exploded. Fewer than 8,000 people visited per year in the early days. Recently, that number has jumped to nearly 125,000 in a single season. Most arrive by cruise ship. Most concentrate in one place, the Antarctic Peninsula, because it is the most accessible stretch of the continent. And crucially, most do not just look from the water. About 2/3 step onto the ice itself. That changes everything. Antarctica is not resilient terrain. The ground is fragile. Soils compact easily and recover extremely slowly. Mosses and microbial communities can take decades to heal from a single footprint. Once disturbed, some areas may never return to their original state. Wildlife feels the pressure too. Breeding colonies of penguins and seals evolved with almost no land-based predators. Repeated human presence alters behavior, stresses animals during critical seasons, and forces managers to reroute or cancel landings entirely. Even when tourists never touch the land, the impact continues. Ships generate air pollution, water pollution, and constant noise. Anchors can damage seabeds that have never been disturbed before. And then there's the carbon footprint. A single cruise passenger traveling to Antarctica typically generates between 3.2 and 4.1 tons of carbon dioxide, not counting flights to the departure port. That is roughly what an average person emits in an entire year. This matters because Antarctica is already changing fast. In the peninsula region, glaciers and ice shelves are retreating. Sea ice is shrinking. Ecosystems are shifting. Tourism contributes only a fraction of global emissions, but it adds pressure in the exact place where global warming is already visible. The system responsible for managing all of this was never designed for growth. Antarctic tourism is governed through the Antarctic Treaty System and a voluntary industry body. The treaty moves slowly and requires constant consensus. The industry group can set standards, but it cannot cap visitor numbers. There is no central authority that can simply say, enough. Some operators have tried to adapt. Hybrid ships, cleaner fuels, carbon offsets, commitments to reduce emissions over time. These steps help, but they do not solve the underlying problem. The number of visitors keeps rising, and the system reacts after the fact. Researchers have tried to model where this leads. Conservative projections suggest that visitor numbers could double within a decade. Less conservative scenarios push the figure far higher. The trend is clear, even if the exact number is not. What makes this especially difficult is that Antarctica has no clear carrying capacity. No agreed-upon number defines how many people the environment can tolerate. Data is limited. Conditions vary by location. And any attempt to set limits immediately runs into politics, fairness, and competing national interests. Antarctica is not being overwhelmed all at once. It is being worn down slowly, landing by landing, season by season. And that growing strain exposes a deeper truth about access to this place, one that has nothing to do with popularity and everything to do with limits. Because the more people try to go, the clearer it becomes that Antarctica was never meant to be opened at all. A place that quietly says no. No one can go to Antarctica in the way most people imagine, because the continent does not allow normal human presence to function for long or without consequence. There is no independent travel and no casual arrival. Every person who reaches Antarctica does so within a tightly controlled system of permits, environmental approvals, insurance requirements, and logistical planning. Visitors must explain where they are going, how long they will stay, what equipment they will bring, and how they will leave. Plans must also account for emergencies that may never be solvable once conditions turn. Antarctica has no hospitals and no permanent emergency services. If someone is seriously injured or becomes critically ill, evacuation depends entirely on weather, distance, and available aircraft or ships. In many cases, evacuation is delayed for days. In some cases, it cannot happen at all. This reality alone quietly excludes most people, regardless of how motivated or well-funded they are. Waste management is another barrier most travelers never consider. Nothing can be left behind. Human waste, food scraps, packaging, broken equipment, and contaminated materials must all be collected and removed from the continent. There are no landfills, no burial sites, and no shortcuts. Supporting even small groups requires careful planning and high costs, which is why permanent tourism infrastructure does not exist. The environment itself is hostile to technology. Batteries drain quickly in the cold. Electronics fail without warning. Plastics crack and shatter. Metals become brittle. Lubricants thicken or freeze. Even simple items like zippers and buckles can stop working properly. Small mechanical problems that would be trivial elsewhere can become serious risks here. Fire poses an even greater threat. Buildings and ships are isolated, water sources are frozen, and firefighting options are limited. A single fire can destroy an entire research station or vessel, with no immediate outside assistance. For this reason, materials, electrical systems, and daily routines are tightly controlled. Navigation also works differently at the bottom of the world. Compasses behave unpredictably near the magnetic pole. GPS coverage is less reliable at extreme latitudes. Satellite communication is limited and expensive. Movement depends on experienced crews and specialized systems, leaving no room for improvisation. Physically, Antarctica places constant strain on the human body. Extreme cold forces the body to burn energy just to stay warm. Heavy protective clothing restricts movement and balance. Ice increases the risk of falls even during routine tasks. Fatigue arrives quickly, even for healthy and prepared individuals. The mental effects are just as real. Antarctica has no familiar sounds, no trees, no insects, and very little visual variation. Long daylight hours disrupt sleep cycles, while endless white landscapes remove the sense of scale people rely on. Some experience awe, others discomfort or anxiety. The environment strips away normal reference points without warning. Layered over all of this are strict legal protections. Wildlife has priority over human movement. Distances from animals are enforced. Routes are limited. Landings are canceled without hesitation when conditions or impacts are unacceptable. The rules are not flexible because the environment recovers slowly, if at all. Antarctica is not blocked by fences or guards. It is restricted by reality itself. Nature makes long-term presence difficult, and the law reinforces those limits. You can technically reach Antarctica, but only briefly, only under constant supervision, and only if everything aligns. And as more people push toward this place, the pressure shifts from whether humans can get there to whether the system designed to protect Antarctica can hold. When too many people try to get in, no one can go to Antarctica freely, and the moment too many people try, the system starts to strain in ways it was never designed to handle. Tourism has turned a place built for small, temporary human presence into a destination under pressure. Most visitors arrive by cruise ship, concentrating activity into a short summer window and a handful of landing sites. Even when rules are followed, repeated landings stack their effects. Footprints accumulate, wildlife encounters multiply. Noise, emissions, and anchoring leave traces that do not disappear between seasons. The governance system watches this happen in slow motion. Antarctica is managed collectively, and every meaningful decision requires agreement among many nations with different priorities. That makes sweeping action difficult. There is no single authority that can set a hard limit and enforce it quickly. As visitor numbers rise, regulation reacts after the fact. The industry has tried to adapt. Some operators use cleaner fuels, hybrid ships, and stricter landing protocols. Others invest in training and monitoring to reduce environmental impact. These steps help, but they cannot change the basic math. More people equals more pressure, even if each visit is handled carefully. This is where economics enters the conversation. Researchers have begun exploring ways to manage access without breaking the legal framework that keeps Antarctica peaceful. One idea is a tourism tax, where visitors pay a fee that funds environmental monitoring, research, and enforcement. This could improve oversight, but it would likely affect budget travelers more than high-income tourists, doing little to slow overall demand. Another proposal is a permit system that limits how many people can visit during a given period. Permits could be distributed to operators or countries and potentially traded, making access scarce and valuable. Systems like this have worked elsewhere to protect fragile environments, but Antarctica presents unique challenges. There is no agreed number for how many visitors the environment can handle, and deciding who gets permits raises questions of fairness and geopolitics. Certification schemes offer another layer. Independent standards could reward lower impact practices and expose greenwashing. But certification alone cannot cap numbers. It can only shape behavior within a growing crowd. What all of this reveals is that Antarctica is not resisting people because of hostility, but because it has limits that are difficult to measure and even harder to enforce. The more interest grows, the more fragile the balance becomes. And that leaves one final question hanging, not about access or rules, but about the cost of getting all of this wrong. The cost of letting the ice decide. Antarctica works because it resists us. It is protected not by fences or force, but by distance, cold, law, and restraint. Together, those barriers have kept the continent peaceful, mostly intact, and largely free from the kinds of damage that have reshaped almost every other place on Earth. But that protection is not automatic. As interest grows, the pressure to treat Antarctica like a destination rather than a responsibility increases. More ships, more landings, more emissions. Each decision seems small on its own, but Antarctica is not a place where damage averages out. Its ecosystems recover slowly if they recover at all. Mistakes linger. Footprints last. Disturbance compounds. The treaty system was designed to prevent conflict between nations, and it has succeeded at that remarkably well. What it was not designed to do is manage popularity in a warming world. It relies on consensus, caution, and goodwill, qualities that work best when pressure is low. As demand rises, those same strengths can become weaknesses. Access to Antarctica is conditional, limited, and always temporary. The continent forces restraint because without it, the very reasons people want to see it would begin to disappear. Antarctica does not promise adventure. It demands responsibility. It asks visitors to accept limits, uncertainty, and the possibility of turning back without seeing what they came for. That is not a failure of the system. It is the system working as intended. The question is not whether humans can reach Antarctica. We already have and can. The question is whether we can resist the urge to push further, to extract more experiences, more access, and more presence until restraint gives way to damage. Antarctica remains one of the last places on Earth where the environment, not the market, sets the terms. Whether that continues depends on choices made far from the ice, in meeting rooms, policy debates, and geopolitical decisions. Because once Antarctica becomes easy to visit, it will already be too late. Would you visit Antarctica if you could? Why or why not? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching. We will see you in our next video.